gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event. With God of heaven, it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of hosts, but strength cometh from heaven. And David put his hand in the bag and took out a stone and slung it, and struck the Philistine on the head, and he fell to the ground. Amen.
Well, we're long past big speeches now, as Norman Dale said. Thank you for that, John Ashbrook. Josh Holmes, comfortably smug. Michael Duncan and John Ashbrook, left and right across your radio dial. Thank you for joining us over the last, some of you have been around for a long time, multiple years. Always feels a little sentimental here at the end of the campaign because you've put everything you can put into it. And I know you, as listeners, have joined us on an emotional journey through primaries, midterms, primaries, and now general election, where it all comes down to this, right, fellas?
Yeah, and I guess my first pro tip, especially for those who, are working on campaigns, that is such a tough job, and it's such a thankless job. It's a job you will learn a ton at. Chief among them, my advice for election day for those folks, the Tums doesn't work. Nothing will stop the acid or the headaches or anything. That's just your body freaking out. It's completely normal. If you feel like you're going to lose consciousness, that just means keep going.
Bare aspirin, though. I do think that's worked for many of us.
I'm a goodies powder guy. But it's election day. This is what it all comes down to. You've had over a year of campaigning, folks being like, yeah, I can't wait to vote for Trump. Hopefully as many folks as possible bank those votes early. Those folks who have not, today's the day. It's election day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly excited, anxious, excited to really see like what happens on election night. And it's like, I feel like if, you get so amped for it and then it's here and like, you don't know how you can emotionally process it.
Yep.
But you just want to see votes like on a TV screen.
That's it. That's it, Johnny.
I got to tell you, I think the Trump campaign has left it all on the field. These guys are working so hard, and I know you guys saw the ads that they rolled out on Sunday, the closer with the great voice and Trump at the end saying, fight, fight, fight.
Yeah.
And there's another ad that they put out on Monday morning that was like went through Tulsi Gabbard and RFK and Elon Musk, and it ended with Trump. And their message is so uplifting. It's cohesive, as we have talked about on the show, that Kamala broke it, Trump can fix it. But it's also very uplifting, and it aims to bring our country together, and I really hope that's what happens after today.
Well, really well said. Obviously, a unique election in a lot of different ways. Thank you for joining us early on YouTube. This is our Election Day show. We wanted to give it to you a little bit early for those of you who have been around for the duration of this. We've really, look, we put our back in all this is because we care. And you guys have given us an awful lot of strength. We'll get into a lot of what you guys have given back to us here later on in the show because it's been gratifying. But look, everybody's got to go out and vote.
Yeah.
And if you haven't cast that ballot, good God.
Because, I mean,
get out there.
The numbers so far we're seeing from the early vote on the Republican side, it looks tremendous. Folks are 100%, like Republicans are extremely motivated to vote, but we got to, like Trump says, we got to swamp the vote. We need to put up as big of a margin as possible. Every single person has to go out and get it done because, listen, the numbers look good, the polls look good, everything can look good, but it doesn't matter until every single last ballot is there for President Trump.
So we're going to give you a little bit of a look at what to expect early on in Election Day, what those states look like, some specifics of what to look for, how it might pave the way through the election. I know that's a real hodgepodge as you're settling in on Election Night. We'll talk a little bit about what you're going to do on Election Night, too, because that's awfully important. But try to give you a map so you can be educated with your friends and family about what it is that you're looking at, what's good, what is potentially bad, what kind of night you're going to have, along with all of us. Because, look, if you've done this for 20 plus years, like we have, election day is an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And there's no easy way to do it. Like, for those of you who think that, like, election day, it's just like, you look like an old school telephone operator. You're just plugging things in. Like, no, it's the first day you don't. It's the first day that an operative is feeling like, shit, my torpedoes are in the water. This is going to work, or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the field staff and everybody else who's driving people to polls, and
field staff who do the real work.
doing all
Let's
of
discuss
that,
them,
like
the heroes.
We'll talk about them too, because they're going to be busier than one-armed paper hangers. But like, I remember just sort of a helpless feeling on election day that you've done everything as best as you could possibly do it. And it's kind of up to everybody else to decide.
Well, and I mean, that's all you can hope to, is to leave it all out there on the field. And I'm gratified to know, because I've met with many of them, that a lot of people get turned on to this show. They start listening to Ruthless as they're driving around various states working on campaigns, logging miles on behalf of a candidate, knocking on doors, putting out yard signs, doing the real work that people are doing all across America today.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's give a shout out. I mean, you did earlier, Smug, but look, a lot of us got our start doing that kind of stuff, and we never would have had any opportunity to get involved any deeper into politics without having rebar in the back of your truck.
Yeah. I want to know what everybody's first thing was. I'll go first.
Go.
Mine was knocking doors and handing out Republican sample ballots at Hinkle Fieldhouse outside Butler in Indianapolis. This was my man Mitch McConnell, Mitch Daniels' re-election effort in 2004, and knocking doors in Broad Ripple. And Broad Ripple is sort of like the hipster, college town part of Indianapolis. So like not a lot of productive meetings at the doors with a lot of left-leaning voters.
Yeah, your volume left a little,
but like
desired.
I think the Indiana Republican Party's official party was there at Hinkle Fieldhouse that night, and I remember some of those early returns. And maybe if you are of a certain age, you recall some of those exits and how far they were off in favor of John Kerry in 2004.
Yep.
And I remember a lot of glum faces at that party, and like from glum people who were like high up, and I was just a kid. And then it just turned.
Yeah, that just got good in a hurry.
Yeah.
It got good in a hurry. That's a good one to start on. Ashbrook?
As with everything in my life, it starts in Cincinnati.
Oh, here we go. He was right outside of Skyline Chili.
Skyline Chili, and he was servicing the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Reds were making an appearance, and Rob Portman was probably involved.
Well, actually, predating Rob Portman, there was a congressman on the west side of Cincinnati named Steve Shabbat, who my uncle went to high school with, and my dad knew from LaSalle on the west side of Cincinnati. And I volunteered for his campaign and a bunch of other local candidates at the time, people running for county commissioner and even a school board candidate. And you cannot replace that sort of experience.
Well, it formulates, for those of us who stuck around in politics and got to a place of decision making, and you're sort of wearing the harness of responsibility for outcomes and things like that. That first experience never changes.
Right. No,
that one you wear every single day. You make decisions based upon that experience, that first experience. Smug?
Yeah.
So I'd say my first political experience was before even on a campaign. Is I got called into the principal's office because I think I knew better, but I didn't care. in high school, I was handing out Republican Party materials and registering voters
Nice.
during class, in between classes, and whatever.
Now, did you have a mustache
Putting up
at this
posters.
point? Because you had a young mustache.
No, I didn't need to buy beers once I needed to buy beer.
Hell yeah.
But I was putting up Republican posters in the hallways, and they're like, "You can't do this," and I was like, "Why not? This is a free country." And they're like, "Well, there's actually rules against that."
Yeah, we actually have explicit rules
Yeah.
about that.
So I was proud of that, but I mean, I started off ground level field, where in my opinion is the real campaign work, door knocking, stuff like that moves the ball, and it is like backbreaking work.
Yeah,
I mean the folks who are out there, you know, organizing the door knockers, getting out there, and every night when you're dog tired is when you had to update the lists. This is before we had all the like handy apps and data and stuff. You know, you were doing those lists by hand. At the end of the night, when you're ready to pass out, nope, you got about 2 hours.
I like to say
updating lists.
I like to say dating is a breeze once you know the rejection of knocking doors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it gets a lot easier to do every single other ask in your life.
Yeah.
After you've done that,
Right?
Because you're going to somebody's home and they don't want to see you even when they're for you.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I mean, St. Cloud, Minnesota, 2002. Norm Coleman against then Paul Wellstone, incumbent senator. And I was in the middle of the state. It was like far away from my home, so I didn't know instinctively a lot of people in the community. So I literally just had to like blind knock, blind call, talk to people who had absolutely no interest. And look, when I was 22 years old or whatever I was then, I didn't look 22. I probably looked like 9. You know, so they're like, "What are you doing here?" I mean, I remember like fake. I had to put like fake glasses on to make it look like I knew what I was doing. It was so bad. And then, you know, like 13 days before the election, the candidate literally dies in a plane crash that we're running against, and I gotta like formulate that, all of that sort of emotional thing. It's a longer story, but in the end, he ends up winning. I wouldn't be here without any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great guy.
Yeah, Norm Coleman, great guy. He continues to be extremely active and helpful on the Republican side. But that's how I got started. You'll hear how we got started. If you're listening to this as a field staff and you're like, man, I don't want to walk one more block. I don't want to knock on one more door. The thing that I've always told everyone who's ever worked in any one of our organizations was the thing that I kept telling myself every single day. It's like, if you do this one thing better than the opposition, just this one thing, as hard as it is, it will pay off. Mm-hmm. If I just do this one thing better than everybody else, doesn't matter if it's like unwrapping a box or if it's like delivering a sign and getting the rebar. God, rebar. Boy, those of you who just have the signs where you just put the plastic bag and you don't know the perils of rebar. You don't know the perils of this stuff. It's all over your hands. Your clothes are all ruined. It's anyway, that's our story. Let's give a little bit of an insight into what it is that you should be looking for. Let me go through some closing times, and then we'll break this down a little bit.
Okay.
You good, fellas?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so 6 p.m. Tuesday night.
Eastern again.
Eastern. Yeah, these are all Eastern times. You've got Indiana Eastern Time Zone region and the Kentucky Eastern Time Zone region. Remember, there are parts of both states that fall into Central Time Zone, but there are significant epicenters of, you look at like Louisville, Lexington in Kentucky, Indianapolis. I mean, there are pieces of this that are significant in terms of trying to extrapolate out what's going to happen. Obviously, we've got a big Senate race in Indiana with Jim Banks, who's likely to become the next senator there. Not a pickup opportunity, but absolutely vitally important that Republicans do well there.
And probably the first race called around the country.
Probably the first federal race called. And so you see that. Look, I'm not telling you don't be happy. Be very happy. He's going to be a great senator. He's a good friend of the program. But we expect to win this thing. And that's the earliest of the early. 7 p.m., the first race calls. This is going to be Georgia. Georgia is obviously, given the last presidential cycle, the midterm, incredibly pivotal to this entire election. And I think we're in pretty good place. There's a polling lead that's happened here over the last 6 weeks in Georgia for Donald Trump. It looks to be pretty strong. The Kemp organization, which is notoriously good, is the one running ground in a lot of these places. They feel good. They think it's going to be tight, but they feel good about it. Fellas, what do you think about Georgia?
One of the things I would like to point out, so the Trump campaign released a memo Monday early afternoon on early vote, and they mentioned the state of Georgia, and the stat that they put out on the state of Georgia is that rural turnout is up 172,000 votes over 2020. Very encouraging for the state of Georgia, and you mentioned Brian Kemp and others who have worked so hard to bring that turnout up.
So remember what you're seeing on your screen, all counties in Georgia should have their early vote in mail reported by 8 p.m. or so. They're allowed to count it. They will count it. You'll then see Election Day stuff rolling in afterwards. Now, it's not like 2020 in that the early vote is going to be universally Democrat. Republicans have competed, as you just said, and done very well at posting an awful lot of voters there. It should be pretty tight. The Election Day stuff is where it is decided, and that will roll in afterwards. So if you're in the first 45 minutes, you don't understand completely which way this thing is going, that's okay, because there's an awful lot of places that are coming in.
This holiday season, millions of families across America will rely on credit card rewards to visit their loved ones. So why are D.C. politicians trying to pass a bill that would end credit card rewards, making it more expensive for families to be together? The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill is a big government handout to corporate megastores that makes them more money, but eliminates travel rewards for you. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
The things to look out for in the view of the experts down there, Clayton County, Bibb, Doherty, Richmond, big Dem counties that have lagged pretty significantly from where they were at in 2020 in their early vote. Whether or not their Election Day vote at that like 45-minute and beyond begins to over-index in that they're filling in what they should be filling in is something to keep an eye on, because they're not where they need to be. Democrats are not where they need to be in the early vote in some of these big Democratic counties that they've enjoyed success that have carried the state in the last 2 election cycles. Fellas, you got anything more on Georgia you want to talk about?
Honestly, I think 7 p.m. is about the time you pour the first bourbon. Like, it's going to be a long night, but at least hold out until 7, because it starts getting interesting right after that too.
Yeah, there's a lot in Georgia to look at. I think Cherokee County, for example, kind of like an exurb of Atlanta, and like what the breakout is for Trump there. I think he won it like 72% in 16. And we saw some attrition there in 20.
Yep.
And then, relative to the, overperformance Biden had in like Cobb County and places like that. And so looking at those early returns there, I think will tell us a lot of what's going to happen across the country. In both of those scenarios, right? Republicans have seen an attrition in the suburbs. Can it go further down? Is it going to rebound? And vice versa, has Biden, the Democrats, maxed out what they get in some of these suburbs?
Very well said. Absolutely. So you go 7:30, about a half hour later, North Carolina, the Eastern time zone there. North Carolina is pivotal to this situation. You recall, if you've listened to the last 3 episodes, North Carolina is absolutely pivotal to Donald Trump's effort to get to 270. It is very, very difficult to find a road to 270 without it, unless something weird happens where you're taking 2 or 3 of the blue wall, you enter New Hampshire and other things. It is absolutely vital. Is where you from? Smug, give us your thoughts.
I'd say the best metric, and a lot of folks will be having data put out there on this, is you look at the turnout in Raleigh and Charlotte. And if that looks super high, that's a problem. If you're seeing good turnout coming from the rural areas, then that's actually good news. So the problem, this is a terrible problem, is post-COVID, the word got out that North Carolina is paradise. And we got flooded with New Yorkers, like unbelievable number of New Yorkers. And they've made their impact felt. So,
and you can't run them out Yosemite Sam style. They just sit
I
there,
wish,
huh?
nothing drives me crazier than leaving a city like New York because you're like, oh God, this place has gone to hell. Moving to a wonderful place and then voting for the stuff that made New York hell in the first place. I'll never understand that. But that's the problem, is if you start seeing big time turnout coming out of Raleigh and Charlotte, it's not a good sign. As it stands, it looks like coin flip close. I mean, across the board, this entire election looks extremely, extremely close. Every single poll is within margin of error. The Republican Party in North Carolina has had tremendous success, a lot of it to Chairman Whatley when he was running the party in North Carolina. Supermajority in the state House, state Senate. Both senators from North Carolina are Republicans, so there's been a lot of success there. But this one's going to be close, and that's what I'm looking for, is how strong is the turnout in Raleigh and Charlotte?
Yeah, and just to put some numbers on that, according to this memo that I mentioned about Georgia that the Trump campaign put out publicly Monday afternoon, they have urban early vote turnout down by 175,000 votes, rural turnout up by 27,000 votes.
Yeah. Now, remember, some of this, don't get too enthusiastic about, because COVID had special stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of people who voted because they were afraid of going outside, and those were libs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may still vote. And so some of the gap between where 2020 was in early vote and mail will close, undoubtedly. Now, it's great. The Republicans have done as well as they have. They didn't in 22. So it's a step up, but it still is something that, like, you can't just count your chickens on this deal. I will say a couple of stats: returned mail and early vote party registration. Republicans won early vote for the first time in North Carolina history.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. It is a big credit to the outside organizations and Donald Trump himself and all of the campaign apparatus that emphasized early vote. They've gotten to a place where they are 8 points above where they were in 2020 going into Election Day. So, look, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
Also, I know for a fact the Trump campaign has paid special attention to Western North Carolina, making sure that the folks there who want to vote can vote, because God knows they've been through a hell of a lot. And for so many of those folks, I mean, if you've lost everything, maybe Election Day isn't that big of a deal. But if they're willing to go out there and do it, and God willing, they all are, the Trump campaign is making sure that those folks are covered. And they've been doing that. You saw the same thing in Pennsylvania. They've been very much on top of it.
No question about it. The last thing, because it applies to North Carolina, but it applies to everything. You've heard a lot from Democrats in the last 48 hours about the number of women that are participating in the early vote window, and women outnumber men. They do overall significantly, and that is a cause for the Kamala Harris campaign to sort of celebrate, like, look how well we're doing. Mm-hmm. Well, if you dig into the numbers a little bit, North Carolina is a specific example. Men make up just 37% of the Democratic vote so far in 2024. They make up 49% of the Republican votes so far. So if you're looking for the gaps to be closed and Democrats to move forward, they will have to add additional women, knowing the gender gap that we're talking about here. Because Republicans are currently +1. And they're doing that with, 60% plus of women voters. So if you're basically tied with 60% of women, it gets a little bit difficult. My point is that the overarching thematic that women are just turning out in this election, and it's really good for Kamala Harris. Yeah, except for the fact that, like, you do have to factor in early vote, or you do have to factor in Election Day and where that thing's going to be made up. And right now it feels pretty good in that. So you go to Pennsylvania. Look, this is a granddaddy. This is the one that there is no path for Kamala Harris without it. They've known that since the very beginning. Trump has made a very big play here. They've spent an enormous amount of time. They won it in 2016, lost it in 2020. A ton of stuff is happening under the radar. You've seen, America PAC with Elon Musk's basically anchored in Pennsylvania. All of these things coming down to it closes at 8 p.m. Now, I will say they also have the law that they cannot count early vote and vote by mail before they count election day votes. That's a state legislative thing. It's one of the reasons why that takes as long as it does, in addition to just like whole host incompetence that happens in Pennsylvania. But you may not know immediately. This is an area where we have seen a large Democratic advantage, albeit half the advantage that they had in 2020, but still large Democratic advantage in that early vote. So the first stuff that hits first in Pennsylvania is going to look pretty Democratic here. And I don't know.
This is, I think, a very critical point you made. The early vote in Pennsylvania is going to look very Democratic.
Or the early report.
The early reports is going to look very Democratic. So because the news is dying to say anything. They'll say any number. They're like, we have here exit poll of 2 voters.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, we've moved to 100% Kamala Harris from the exit poll of 2 voters. So early on, yes, it's important to know because, I mean, the doomers are going to be out there. Don't black pill. Don't let the doom set in. Remember all the work we've put in and hang tight.
Hang tight. Again, men make up just 39% of the Democratic vote, which is a overall 23-point advantage in early vote. But they only have men at 39. If you're sensing a pattern here, the pattern is men got to vote on election day.
Yeah.
And if our dudes come out, this is going to look really good. But that low propensity male vote, whether it's young or old, is the big bet that the Trump campaign is making, that they can turn these people out. If they do, Pennsylvania goes red. If they don't, it'll be blue as all get out.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'm looking at in Pennsylvania is really like 2 major storylines of this election. Has Donald Trump improved with Hispanics? And there's a number of communities there sort of between Philadelphia up to the Wilkes-Barre area. I'm thinking like Hazleton, places like that have a lot of like second-generation Hispanic communities that are sort of booming, and I want to see the breakouts in those areas. And then, Luzerne and Lackawanna up there in northeastern Pennsylvania. Scranton Joe, that was sort of the myth of Joe Biden, and can Kamala cobble together enough of those sort of Union Democrats that live in the Lackawanna County area, like Pittston, Exeter, places like that, or Luzerne County as well. And so that's going to tell, I think, it's going to be a preview of the story in the rest of the Rust Belt.
Yeah, and I will say, look, Trump may be able to change the model here a little bit just by virtue of expanding low propensity male voters across the state. But if history is our guide here, you're talking about those Philly suburbs, Bucks County, Chester County, Delaware County. He doesn't need to win them. He can't get blown out of them. Can't get blown out of them. You will see some early returns on that front. Keep an eye on those 3 counties, too.
Well, here's the thing. I'm really glad that you mentioned what is going to be reported when in the state of Pennsylvania as sort of a viewer's guide for people tuning in tonight, because it is so important not to lose heart. If you have to remember what's happening in the early vote, it's early vote, it will be reported later. Democrats have 700,000 fewer early votes, according to the data, than they had in 2020. And back to this Trump campaign memo, in the state of Pennsylvania, urban turnout is 380,000 votes fewer on early vote than it was in 2020.
A lot of reason for optimism there, but again, it was a very different circumstance in COVID and people not wanting to go to polls. So they all voted by mail early and had that option, and it will all happen within 3 weeks of an election. If you go east of that. We're staying in the 8 o'clock hour, Michigan. It's a big, big, big one. This is one that, look, Democrats have had a problem with from day one because of their moral ineptitude of being able to tell a true story of what they support about America's allies around the world. And they've tried to balance a support for Israel, which is the right thing to do, with this like pro-Hamas messaging. We've talked about this forever. It hurts in Dearborn, Michigan, with a huge Arabic population that they're deathly scared of. You saw a story over the weekend about them running 2 different sets of advertising.
This is just so shameless.
That's just wild.
One set of advertising is talking about their support for Israel. The other is an immediate ceasefire. Obviously, those messages are a direct contradiction. You would like to think that most Americans understand authenticity when they see it. That is a really bad sign for them. They have been in trouble in Michigan all the way through. Now, granted, other than the 2016 Donald Trump victory there, Republicans haven't won a meaningful statewide federal race since 1999 in Spence Abraham for the Senate. It is one of those, we both have them, Republicans and Democrats, one of those states where you're always close, but you're always the bridesmaid. This one feels like he could get home. He just needs one of them. He just needs one of these Rust Belt blue wall states. Could it be Michigan, fellas?
I think it's going to depend on what Oakland County looks like. I mean, everybody talks about Detroit, obviously, and, you know, for Democrats turnout there, and Wayne County is going to be super important. But Oakland and Macomb have really told the story of, you know, the Donald Trump era as the Republican Party has changed. You know, Macomb, especially the northern part of Macomb County, has really, you know, grown for Republicans,
yes.
I think, and the alternative has been true in Oakland County, which are your more affluent suburbs like Rochester Hills, places like that, Oakland. And so, you know, does that trend continue, or have Republicans managed to regain some momentum in the suburbs, or are they going to blow it out? You know, I mean, like, that really is one of the defining storylines of this election.
Yep. Incredibly important Senate race there as well, with Mike Rogers as well as Pennsylvania, obviously. Look, there's an up and down ticket issue here, and we're going to know pretty quickly. As of 8 p.m., maybe 9, you get to a point where you've got an idea of which way things are headed. But as we go to 9 o'clock, you start to look at the Western stuff. Wisconsin is being a critical, the third of the big blue wall states. She has to have it, absolutely has to have it. If Trump wins it and couples it with Arizona, it's over. 2-7-2. Ball game. I remember back in 2016 when we were looking at all of this, before they called Pennsylvania, they called Wisconsin, and it was ball game. And MSNBC was just an absolute delight at that point.
Yeah.
This is why we fight. I mean, I remember, I've seen it on YouTube now a million times whenever I need to be picked up, because this is what we want so badly, and why it's so important, especially if we have family in these states, and if they haven't done early voting. This is why you got to get them out to vote, because I promise you it is so sweet, especially working on campaigns. You want to know that you worked as hard as possible so you can look back on it with pride rather than lose and be like, I have regrets.
Yeah, and what I always like to say is own the libs. And if you want to own the libs, do it in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Really well said. The other one that starts at 9 o'clock, Arizona. Look, a lot of reason for optimism in Arizona. There's been a polling lead there throughout the fall for Donald Trump. Democrats have made a late play there. They think that there is something to get. Although if you look at returned mail and early vote registration, Republicans are +8, and they're running 9 points better than they did in 2020. Again, the same thematic that I'm talking about. Men make up just 40% of the Democratic vote, early votes. They're running 8 points down, but they're doing that with 60% of women. If men show up, if you do the thing on Election Day, this one's going to be a donezo deal, and it could be donezo relatively quickly. Maricopa County notwithstanding, because they like sit and I've got a lot of adjectives I can use. I'm not going to do that. But the point is like they're going to screw around for a while.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal? Reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org. I will say, going back to this Trump memo, female vote in the state of Arizona on the early vote is down 170,000 votes from the early vote picture in 2020. So there's a chance to take it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. And then, you know, Nevada is the last one. We're talking about some Western time zone stuff, 10 o'clock. Early vote there has looked terrific. Republicans have got a 44, I think, thousand vote advantage. More importantly, there are places like Elko, places outstate that are heavily Republican that just did not participate in an early vote and mail deal back in 2022, have now participated at a pretty significant level. It's contributed to a Republican advantage. Clark County is the big daddy there. You got to keep your eye on day of election day drop stuff. It's part of their machine. It's why they wanted all of the election laws that sort of advantage Democrats. So you may not know for a while. That's a state that I think that the early returns are going to look really, really good for Trump. You just got to hold on for a bit because they reel that stuff back in with a machine that is designed.
The Democrats do that. They're like harvesting and everything. You're going to see it. And look, Las Vegas is a union town. Like the number of unionized folks there, and they are organized. And yes, Trump has made significant inroads. There's a lot of union folks who are not planning on voting for Kamala. But in terms of being a turnout machine, there's still a turnout machine for the Democrats in that state.
Yeah, and nobody is closer to that Democrat turnout machine than a guy named John Ralston, unabashed lefty.
He's your friend.
Unabashed,
good buddy John Ralston.
Unabashed lefty who, just as we're filming this
has he dropped his prediction?
Dropped his prediction and predicts Kamala Harris to have a narrow win over Trump in the state of Nevada. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but this guy watches the state, and he's very close with the Democrats, and he knows what they're going to drop. And so when we talk about how a Republican early vote lead can be erased by Democrat harvesting a day of drop boxes, that is what he's looking at.
Yeah, believe me, we know what we're talking about on that.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about on that. Although
we know it a little too well.
No snowstorm in northern Nevada this year, but it still needs to be, look, you got to vote.
Yeah.
You got to vote.
If you're a young dude and you're listening to this, go grab like all of your bros.
Yeah, every single one.
Go get, because we know how you would vote if you vote, but there's a reason why people don't target you. The reason they don't target you is because you have a low propensity to actually go out and do it. If you go do it, this is a no-doubter. If you don't, this is a nail-biter or a loss. That's what it is. And like anybody who thinks that this is like, wow, Trump's got this thing in the bag, they're crazy.
Yeah, no.
They're crazy. That is not the case. That is not what the numbers show. And if you ask the campaigns themselves, they're nail-biting. They're nail-biting. So you got to go do it. You got to get and put your back into it, for God's sakes. Really important. When we come back, we'll tell you what to look for when the polls start closing. We've kind of done all of that, but I really, really want you to focus on trying to get all of your friends and neighbors. Because you're listening to this in the morning, you might be having a lunch break, and you're looking around, you're seeing your people. That's the stuff that you're gonna have. You're gonna have to go out and like grab your cube mate. Grab the guy who's digging next to you. Just like make sure everybody goes out.
Yeah, put that coffee down.
Yeah. All right. So one of the most gratifying things, as we said at the top of the program, was how into it you guys are, and reflecting back what it is that you are hearing and doing, and posting you and Ruthless merch, voting early with the I voted sticker. We've seen thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. We feel like that helps us know that we're making a difference in this thing, and it's all because of you and what it is that you're doing. We wanted to give you a little love back. Let's post some of these pictures. Can we get to the first fan here? There it is. I mean,
I love that.
Just an awesome. I mean, that's exactly what we want to see. This is from Kit Kat. Husband and I did our part in Michigan Blue County.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see minion number 2. This is from Todd White.
You gotta love it.
So great.
Banked behind hostile lines in Cali. Well, I don't know exactly where you're at in Cali, but the difference between a House majority and a House minority may very well lay in your hands.
Yeah.
And doing that is really, really important. Let's see the third one here, Spaghetts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that guy means business. I like this a lot. This is Rich Wood. Bank my early vote in my Ruthless merch. I'm not kidding you. There are literally thousands of you who have sent us these things over the last few weeks. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. We've tried to emphasize as best we can the need to go in and do that. Save the campaign some resources. Make sure that we know votes are in the box. You guys are responding. Best listeners in the business, right, fellas?
And they're making a tremendous difference in terms of getting our country back on track. And like you said, helping the campaign resources. Because, I mean, this is going to be close. If it's like last time, what was it, 40,000 votes across how many states, Duncan?
Yeah,
that
across like
it?
7 states.
Yeah. So every single person like that, and Kit Kat, the first one was like, took the husband with me, went and voted in Michigan. It's like, that's moving the needle.
That's Harry.
That's getting it done.
That's Harry.
Yeah.
That Trump is talking about.
Get off your fat ass, Harry. Go vote.
It totally is. And thank you for doing it. Keep them coming. Give us some election day stuff. We got to know that you're coming, particularly if you're a young dude.
Yes.
If you are a young dude, flood it. I want to see every single picture out there, because you, right now, everyone matters, but you're the people that are under-indexing.
Yep.
You're the people that they need to over-index in order to win. The Trump campaign made a big bet.
Yep.
And they made a big bet that all of your suburban wine moms who are hung up on the issue of abortion and who couldn't stand Donald Trump's personality, it would take $10 billion to try to persuade them to do something different in this election. So they put their faith in you.
And that's the thing, is they bet on young men who, you look at the polling data over the past couple of years, they feel like things are going so bad they'll never own a home in this country, that the American dream, they think, is completely out of hand.
Depressing.
And the Trump campaign decided to bet on them because they're looking out for them.
Yep.
And so now's the time, cash in those chips, because it will make a difference. When you have a government that actually cares about your concerns and doesn't demonize you, doesn't think you're the problem, but that they want to help you with the problem that you're facing every day in this country. Everything's more expensive than you can ever remember it being. Houses seem like you'll never be able to afford it. You can have someone there trying to help you. All it takes is going out and voting.
Yeah.
And didn't go along for the ride with a Hollywood PR effort that tried to convince every person in America that every man was a rapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they did that. All those people did that. And then they used it and tried to prosecute Justice Kavanaugh upon that movement to try to make up out of whole cloth what a good man seemingly did in high school that would disqualify him from the high court. And it all turned out to be nonsense.
Right.
Like the serial rapist, they were calling him.
Yeah.
Like this is, listen, I'm telling you guys, you don't get another one of these things.
Right. They have spent years trying to paint every regular guy in this country as the enemy.
Yep.
And nothing could be further from the truth.
If they get away with that, if you turn out at 50%, 25 to 40, if you turn out, I don't care where you live, if you turn out at 50% rate, do you think that there's any chance they're ever going to stop doing that? Why would they? You don't do anything about it. You're just letting it happen to you. They're going to try to capitalize around all the hand-wringing wine moms, all the like suburban dudes who are like, I don't know, my business is like doesn't need a lot of controversy, you know, all of that stuff, and try to capitalize around a Democratic base that they know gets them to 51. It's up to you.
Yep.
You either show up or you don't. And if you don't show up, don't come to us fucking crying about it.
That's the thing.
Don't come out. Don't say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Couldn't make it.
This country let me down again."
That's I mean, I think it says everything about where the campaigns stand. Of Kamala's campaign is essentially betting that young men in this country are going to stay quiet and not take part and just sit at home. And the Trump campaign is betting on them showing up and taking the country back.
They think you're too busy playing video games and watching internet porn.
And that's the thing. They even run ads to patronize them. And they'll get like Tim Walz to try and play Madden with AOC, get 0-0. And he's like, well, we ran the pick six play. Like, that's what they think of young men.
They don't think that you like do what you do. But the only way to show them is to show up. That's all you got to do. So let me, before we get into your question of the day and your comments from last week, just say that there is a couple of big bets that are going to be settled tonight. The first big bet is the one that this program has talked about for 2 years, which is Democrats understood the polling to be that Donald Trump could not get above 48% in the states that matter to get to 270. They believed it. They still believe it. They thought they could do it with Joe Biden until they realized that his polling numbers, because he couldn't frickin' complete a sentence, were below 48. But they believe it, which is why they went to Kamala Harris, why they were comfortable going to Kamala Harris. All spring long, you heard Democrats talk about, well, we can't actually replace Joe Biden because the obvious choice would be his number two, Kamala Harris, who's terribly unpopular and unfit for office and everything else. And we couldn't navigate a primary and that kind of thing. But ultimately, they decided they're going to go with Kamala Harris because of that one fact. They did not believe that Donald Trump could get above 48%. That's why they have confidence here. They're either right or they're wrong. That's up to you. The second big bet is a Trump by the Trump campaign that we just talked about, which is you had a whole bunch of post-Dobbs women who were just not, there was a single issue thing, and you knew it added to the Democratic base. But if you could appeal to low propensity men at a younger generation the same way that they appealed to rural voters and blue dog Democrats in 2016, you would change the universe of voters who are going to show up on Election Day. So they spent an inordinate amount of time talking to Theo Vaughns of the world, doing like the Barstool tour.
Aiden Ross, like Barron, I've been told, had a significant part in helping the campaign be like, here's where you do it, here's where you do it. And there were times when, like, I think the Aiden Ross stream had like close to 1 million people concurrent streaming that thing. So like the campaign has completely bet on, listen, young men are going to be a part of this one. They see the future. Like it's two separate paths, essentially. Yeah. Kamala, who thinks you're the problem, and Trump, who's trying to find a solution for you.
Well, what I liked about the strategy is it didn't treat politics as a zero-sum game. It tried to grow the pot.
Yeah.
Right? And to your point earlier, Holmes, of like, do you spend $500 million trying to convince, suburban wine moms to change their opinion that they formulated 6 years about you?
Right.
That they're scared to talk about Donald Trump at the country club? No, you're not. You're going to try to grow the pot. You're going to try to find new voters, low propensity voters, people who are disengaged from politics, feel like our country has let them down. They're never going to own a home, to your point, Smug, and try to get those people inspired to something. It's definitely a strategy. We'll see if it pans out tonight, but it's a better strategy than being like, suburban wine mom, what do you want? Oh, you still didn't vote for me for the 6th straight time? Okay, all right. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally. And the other thing is that, like, to me, it shows such a difference between the two campaigns, where the Trump campaign is so much more optimistic.
Yeah.
When they're like, we want to get more people involved in this because we want to make America great again for you, right? Whereas you see the, like, cold, cynical, calculating nature of the Kamala campaign, where they were like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden's not going to be Republicans are pushing conspiracy theories. They had this all spring that Joe Biden won't be on the ballot. And then they're like, okay, we look at the numbers. Joe can't get it done. Someone take him out back. And I guess it's Kamala.
Yeah, and actually, she's not an idiot. She's not everything we've been saying for the last 3 years. She's the person we want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the ruse that they pulled over everybody in this country with the help of the mainstream media is legendary, and I really hope somebody writes a good book about that.
The third and final big bet that is being made that we're going to find out the answer to because it will not be replicated if it's not successful is Donald Trump opening the tent up to the RFKs and the Tulsi Gabbards and your libertarian-leaning folks who don't find themselves in the Democratic Party any longer. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole host of issues that come along with that. Some of that is international. Some of that's domestic, healthcare policy, all of these things. There is a reason why that has not been a core demographic of the Republican Party for a while, and it is because it is a notoriously difficult cadre of voters to corral. They are contrarian by nature. They are not particularly interested in party politics. They don't like to be told what to do. RFK is still on the ballot in a lot of these places.
Yeah, particularly I'm worried about that in Michigan.
Right? And if he's able to harness those voters, this thing's done. It's not close. He will run the blue wall. If he's not, you're going to have a serious regression in party politics about trying to cater to those voters, because there's never been a clearer choice.
Yeah.
There's never been, I mean, she's running a straight establishment Democratic campaign. There is no change. She's like, no change.
I saw on The View, Whoopi Goldberg's like, you should be CIA director, Liz Cheney.
yeah. I mean, this
when
is
Kamala wins. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It's like Donald Trump showed up at the Libertarian Convention.
Yeah.
Like, when does that ever happen?
Never.
You know? And so, like, if you look, I'm just saying, if you are like a libertarian-ish conservative, a really like limited government person who cares about personal liberty in this country, and you don't vote for Donald Trump and you vote for RFK and you live in Michigan, then like you get what you deserve.
You get, and your vote is not going to be competed for by either party for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, they will tread on you.
They will. It'll say, do tread on you.
And that's, I mean, it's great. You see RFK's putting these messages out. The Trump campaign's got video. He's like, listen, if you're in Michigan, vote for Trump. They've kept me on the ballot. Vote for Trump. That's huge. And like Duncan said, like if you care about limited government, right, and a significant portion of folks too who are not registered Republicans, they're still concerned. You've got one side saying we're going to fire the bureaucrats. Yeah. We're going to cut the size of this government. Yeah. You've got the other one who's like, well, what we need to do is expand government, like, tremendously. Why can't they run your healthcare and tell you what to do?
And like, I understand, you know, like if you like want to abolish the Federal Reserve, you know, like this, like Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or RFK for that matter, like nobody's going to be enough for you, and they never are. But like, don't look this gift horse in the mouth. Yep. Like, Donald Trump has made major overtures, certainly more than any Republican has in my lifetime, to people who think that way. Yeah. So like, just take a win for once.
Take the win.
I know how allergic y'all are to taking wins, but
well, the old man was allergic too at one point, but he's come around. Yeah. He's come around. So we all have our traditions of what we're going to do on election night. Be interested in some of yours, fellas. But our big question of the day to everybody is, what are you going to do on election night? It's a stressful time. Like, do you sit on the couch, you watch with your family, do you get people around? Like, there's nothing better than a big party when you win. There's nothing worse than a big party when you lose. We've all experienced these things before. Smug, like, what do you do on election night?
Yeah, like I said, so I usually wait until some of the Eastern time zone states close to crack the bourbon. So, because now with our elections, it's typically a long night, if not a long week. So you want to hold out as long as possible so you make it all the way through. Hopefully we get a call that evening that Trump wins, but in case we don't, you have to be in it for the long haul. My tradition, like I said, is I start drinking then, and then if things start looking good, that's when I first start sending the texts out to left-leaning family members and you know,
start trolling them
instantly. But you got to know things are looking good. right? If not, don't answer the phone.
You don't want to leave that open.
I mean, because I'm getting texts. I mean, it's the same for all of us from operatives across the country.
Everyone's
like,
asking.
This is good. This is good. And then also what are you seeing? What are you seeing out there? So the bourbon helps cope with all of that and stay on top of all of that because, like we said, a lot of the early votes that you're seeing are not going to be representative of what's going to look like, 30 minutes later when they have like actual numbers. Because the news, they just have to sound like they know what they're talking about. So they'll have, like I said, an exit poll of 2 people and they're like, oh my God, 100% Kamala Harris. It's a wrap, folks. Be in it for the long haul. Start trolling the lefties the second it starts looking really good. If they call some of these states early, if all the
you
hard work
be prepared
we put
to
in,
hammer down.
go after them.
Leave your imprint.
Go after them.
I like that. Duncan, how about you?
Well, I feel like there's a whole decision tree, but it all begins with drinking.
Yeah.
I've obviously had a few pops already tonight, as you can tell from my red cheeks. Scotch Irish, like you just get the red cheeks.
It's just part of it.
It's just part of it. So I think the beginning of that decision tree is alcohol. I've decided I'm gonna sous vide a steak.
Oh, there you go.
When you have some extra time, I'll have like a little.
Put it together.
Yeah, I mean it's a special occasion.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do
some
that.
Rosemary sprigs.
Some rosemary sprigs, some garlic, and
Yeah.
some butter in there, vacuum sealed.
Yeah.
You put it in at like 146 degrees or whatever, from perfect medium rare in about 35 minutes.
And then you take it out and give it a slap.
Just a sear,
Yeah.
like a second, maybe like a high smoke point oil,
Yeah.
like a grapeseed or something like that.
Now, are the kids hiding from you at this point?
No, at this point they're in bed.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and mainly be on a liquid diet until they're asleep.
Right.
Then once they're asleep, I'm going to be.
And they know better than to steer. They want to steer clear of dad on election.
Well, I don't beat my kids, Josh. They're going to be asleep. This is unbelievable.
I had this awesome mental
Stay
image
away from dad.
of like,
okay.
You've got Duncan at the table with the steak and a handgun.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, don't talk to him.
Don't
Well,
talk to
you gotta pay. Look, for our listeners that know Duncan and know what he's like in the last, because you've listened to it over the last 3 weeks. Like, I felt like we needed to clear that up.
I'm a fantastic father.
I know that.
Can I
They
get
might
can I
not
get
know
through the
that.
rest of it? Here's the rest of it
Okay.
is open a bottle of red wine. And then I'm gonna look at those early returns. And like back to Smug's point, like if it does look good early. And I think there's a reasonable chance it does. I mean,
Yeah.
like Indiana closing first.
Sure.
I lived there for a long period of time, know it really well. I remember in 2016 when Ashbrook and I were in Indianapolis, helping on Todd Young's campaign. Like real quick, you saw those returns from like Lake County, like up there in northwest Indiana, and you saw the Democratic attrition in these union-rich, old factory towns, and you're like, that's not good for the rest of the Rust Belt, right?
Yeah.
So you look at that, and let's say Trump regains a foothold in the suburbs in like Hamilton County, Carmel, that area, and if that looks good, I'm just. That whole bottle.
You're going straight to
I'm
the
going
bottom.
fishbowl.
Yeah.
I'm going fishbowl.
So if you're looking for like really sort of articulate, poetic stuff, that's the time. It's like a 10 to 11.
That's when Duncan
That's when he
transforms into
becomes.
Herman Melville.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I will be posting. I'll be posting my heart out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. How about you, Smash?
Well, every election night for the last 20 years, I've been working.
Yeah.
And I've done a party or returns, and that doesn't really change this time. I'll be working this election night too, but the venue is different. I'm going to be watching with my kids. I got girls, and I'm pretty excited. They're getting a little bit older. They're very interested in the election.
Oh.
I'm pretty excited about watching history unfold with them while tweeting and texting people through the process.
It's good. It's funny how your kids get older. I got a 7-year-old. A Kamala ad came on this weekend during football, and he looks at me, and I didn't even know he was following any of this. Like, literally none of it. We've spoken zero about politics. And he turned and he goes, but Trump's a lot better, right, Dad?
Whoa.
He is indeed.
Good vibe in the
He
house.
is indeed, son. I, too, have been working each and every last 20. Probably will be doing that again this year. But I'd like to go blow off some steam. And, I'd really like to work my way over to the old man's house because that sounds like a lot of fun. If I can help finish off some kind of a bottle of bourbon.
You better hurry.
Tweet out the photo of
I'll bring
Duncan.
a second.
Tweet out the photo of Duncan with the handgun and a steak on a table and the children cowering.
I'll make my way into that purple suit that you got me.
Yeah.
All right, so your question from last Friday was, what's your prediction? What states will it take to get Trump to 270? We have some answers for that. Remember, you got to like and subscribe to get into this and answer today's question. But we always start with a voice.
And as we always say, like and subscribe if you wish to opine. And opining first for us today is the real Sisson. And Sisson writes, thanks for another great episode, fellas. It helped me get caught up on things during my drive back from Detroit. I found myself in the same hotel as Kamala and company all weekend.
Kidding.
While dealing with the Secret Service with my family was inconvenient, it was nothing in comparison to watching the Smug campaign staff floating around the lobby as if to be doing important things. It gets better. Lots of pajamas and slippers and cat pictures on the back of iPhones.
That's good.
He continues, I'm nervous about Michigan. There's been a shift here. I'm getting in the car tomorrow to drive people to the polls. Going to leave it all on the field.
Hey,
What a
Yeah,
hero.
buddy.
What a hero.
That's what I'm talking about. Thanks for doing your part. It's going to take that kind of thing to get that thing done. Let's go to comment 2, please. Old man.
This is from Lisa Marie. Lisa Marie writes, I'm horrible at guessing. I'll say 302. Kamala may keep Wisconsin, but Trump gets the rest. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets Wisconsin in a bonus, like New Mexico, and ends up at 217. There's a lot of talk out there of like a standard deviation away, a polling error against Donald Trump in the current polling, you know, and
New Hampshire seems to be the
Hampshire,
one. Yeah.
Virginia people were talking about stuff like, I don't know. All I know is the guy's run for president now twice, and both times they dramatically underpolled his voters.
Right.
So it's possible. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? I like the optimism, Lisa Marie. Let's go to comment 3, please, Smuggles.
Sure. This is from Cole Garrett. And Cole writes, I'm calling it as 316 electoral votes for Trump, meaning all 7 battlegrounds plus New Hampshire. Part of me wants to throw Minnesota in there and go 326, but that's just because I want to see the shotgun Muppet lose his own state.
That's very
I'm
funny.
not so convinced on that one.
So good. If my mini boys are any indication, they have high level of enthusiasm about voting on election day. So we'll see. Minnesota, you know, might be one of those states you were talking about.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? But the shotgun Muppet is one of the
Great name.
that is one of the better names that we've heard in a long time. All right, so you guys ready for some variety?
Yeah.
Oh, got to have a little bit of fun on election day, you know, looking around a little bit. But the place we have to start is where we left off last Friday.
Yep.
We talked about a squirrel.
We did.
And you'll recall the story of Peanut, where he was abducted by state authorities from his rightful owner, as Hugh Hewitt has clearly established on this program, owner of this pet, abducted, and you posited a theory.
Yeah, so here's the thing is when we last left this story, all we knew was the New York state authorities had 6 agents go and seize this squirrel. So this guy had found, I think it was by the side of the road, a dead squirrel mom and a baby squirrel. The baby squirrel was just sitting by his dead mom. And this guy picks up the baby squirrel, takes him home, and once you know it, they're like friends for like 6 years.
6-7 years.
Yeah. And the guy also runs like a wildlife refuge, right? So it's not like just, hey, I'm bored, let's figure out how this works. He
Yeah.
actually knows what he's doing. Anyways, New York State decides to have 6 agents, you know, raid his place, asking him for his papers and whatnot. They seize this squirrel Peanut and a raccoon that he had there too. That's where we left off. And my guess was, I was like, if I know government bureaucrats, they've killed them both already. They're good as dead, right?
Fred the raccoon being the
Fred the
second.
raccoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, they 100% bullet to each of them, Ziploc bag, one of those evidence bags, and they're already at the landfill, 100 feet of dirt under them.
And you called this well before it was reported.
News broke. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happened.
They now, The only remaining questions are whether they reside in a Ziploc or whether their everlasting eternity is in fact what you ascribe to all animals, whether they're in hell.
I mean, there's a good chance, I think, you know. They're wild animals. You know? They go to hell.
But Peanut will not die in vain. I think the death of a famous animal in this country predicts a Trump victory. You may recall in 2016, the jackbooted thugs of the Cincinnati Zoo murdered Harambe. Best friends. He's best friends with all of them.
That is right.
Cincinnati native Harambe.
I think they were right to kill that gorilla, though.
Harambe deserved to get it.
Yeah, it was a bad gorilla, and he tried to kill that kid.
But Harambe cut down in his prime, and then Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. I think we're going to see that again.
He was a bad gorilla.
He was. I think there was a history of problems.
Gorilla expert, comfortably smug.
Did you guys see?
He's the Jane Goodall of the variety program. It's just ludicrous.
Did you guys see the video of Peanut's owner walking through his home and all of the destruction caused by these New York officials? And they're not just any. It's not like they cops.
This is Longo.
These are
Mr. Longo.
This is Longo.
He's not going quietly.
Walking through his house, showing what the officials from the New York Environmental Corps did to him. It's like the Environmental Department of New York has its own army. And they walked into his house and they pulled out every drawer. They pulled everything out of every closet.
Did you see what they were looking for?
Ransacked the place.
They wanted to ascertain that his wife, who, to my knowledge, was born in America, her citizenship status.
Are you kidding?
So, like,
I don't believe that.
I'm dead serious.
That's the one thing that they have not done to any New Yorker.
That's the thing. It's
are
you serious?
You kill somebody in New York if you're an illegal immigrant, they put you back on the street. But heaven forbid you give a home to a squirrel.
They're
like, get out of here.
The priorities are so jacked up, and
Back to Guatemala.
When bureaucrats run the place, this is what you get.
Yeah,
like these are from some environmental department, so you know they're crazy to begin with.
Yeah,
and they're like, kick in the door.
Well, as one of our friends pointed out, it's important to note that all of the polling that we've based all these projections about, the aforementioned portion of the story, did not reflect the death of Peanut.
Yeah.
And so there's a chance that there is a big surge towards Donald J. Trump as the death of Peanut and Fred, presumably.
I mean, he released a statement. It was a great statement.
He released a statement. This is a presidential issue now here in the last week of the campaign. Can't say the variety program wasn't on that first. Thank you all for tuning into that, because that was... We were ahead of the game on that.
100%.
Ahead of the game. All right, so this one, the second story, you guys are going to like this. It's from the New York Post. Rudder creates largest GPS-drawn penis to raise money for charity.
My God.
Quote, unquote, hardest thing I've ever done, unquote.
So the New York Post, like, dreams of this kind of stuff.
Can we put the graphic up, graphic 2? You're not going to... Look at this guy.
Boy, Alexander Hamilton really started something, didn't he?
Here's my favorite. Keep it up for a minute. I want to talk over this for a second. If you look for our YouTube viewers, what you can look at there, what's amazing is that he did a pretty significant venture inward at one point and decided it was not enough. Ventured back and expanded his route a little bit there I'm looking at maybe the southeastern direction of this man's route.
Yeah, like any good artist, he wanted to provide some depth of field. Not merely enough to have that circle, you need to have the depth of field provided there by an additional line.
According to the New York Post, not the Ruthless Variety Program, he went balls out on this stiff challenge.
That's what I'm saying. Like, New York Post is like, this is our Super Bowl.
Rudder used the route tracking app Strava to draw the largest GPS mapped penis to raise money for men's mental health issues. So it's a good cause.
Good cause.
It's a good cause. The
good.
record-breaking 75-mile phallus was drawn in less than 24 hours by Terry Rosamond, 39, a marketing director from South Wales, during a trek through the Welsh mountains. He's already raised more than $9,000. He's only raised $9,000 for the men's charity month of November, while trying to get a laugh of like-minded men. That's why it's a big manhood, because especially for the target demographic that I'm aiming at, men never grow up, he told the North Wales Live.
If you listen to this show, you know that to be true.
You do. You do. It's why we do this thing. Do you guys remember there was like a maybe an Air Force thing, like maybe 5 years ago, where Air Force
he
planes
flew a route.
They basically drew this with a GPS with a plane, just that one big phallic symbol.
They're funny.
And, I mean,
They're just funny.
Like, it's always funny.
It's always funny.
It's funny.
I'm going to be 90 years old and I'll still laugh at it.
I'll still laugh at it. So hats off to this guy. He's really done. Rosamond. Really good work.
Yeah.
Really, really good work. All right. So, listen. We're at the end of this thing, fellas. If I know, how many of you have already voted?
Voted.
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning for me, too.
Same.
You're a Tuesday
For the
morning.
content. Everyone should have voted early. There's no excuse except for content.
Yeah.
So I'm
well,
the only one who voted early.
Well,
You did the right thing.
For us, it's like look. It's you did the right thing. I didn't have like a moment in the afternoon that I
Maybe you guys are part of the problem.
could take care of
Yeah,
it.
there's no. Well, my excuse is I'm also going to be watching poll sites and helping out down there.
Here's the thing: there's nothing that anyone could do to stop me tomorrow morning from getting to that poll site.
Sure, buddy.
Nothing.
Because no,
Nothing.
I guess we'll
you never
see.
know.
Nope.
I
Should've voted early.
want to see.
Kid gets sick. Well, he's gonna have to wait an hour.
I want to see photos of all of your ballots, or I'm going to tell
Of the
everyone.
ballots.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you the sticker, but I think that's illegal if I provide.
I don't
the
care.
ballot.
There are no laws.
You can check.
I'll send it.
You can check your laws. I
Well,
think
we
it's like
make-
a half and half situation. It's definitely legal in Virginia to take a ballot selfie.
Okay, well,
I'm pretty sure of that.
Okay.
I mean, double check. I'm not a fucking lawyer.
No,
here.
I'd love to do that, and then all of a sudden end up in prison because Michael Duncan thinks that I need to prove my. But I'll do it anyway.
I could just vote it early, but
Yeah. Well, I'm
Then-
going to do it.
then I would check. I'd already have your information from the Secretary of State.
And let me implore you. If you haven't made a plan to vote, do this. Do this now. Get out there. Drag friends and coworkers. I don't care if they're... Even if you think that they're like, oh, man, I don't know. I've got a big TPS report. Fuck your TPS report. There is nothing that you can do that is more important today than going out and voting. We need to make this happen. We're counting on you. And I just told everyone, we're talking about everyone, but I told you the people that we're looking at here. If young dudes don't show up, I'm just telling you, I ain't saying, but I ain't saying, they're never going to take you seriously ever again. You can be an old man, you can watch the way they treat your sons. You can watch it, and you did it to them. You did it to them. So just get out there and make this happen. Fellas, any closing words?
That's it. Go out there and vote. This is the day we've been talking about it for a year. We've been working towards it for a year. Today's the day.
Today's the day,
Yeah,
fellas.
no, I mean, regardless of what happens, we'll still be here.
Yeah,
And hopefully you will too.
Hopefully.
we'll still be here. We'll recap all of this, obviously, after the election, hopefully with a bunch of happy news. But no matter what, we're going to give you thoughts and insights about exactly what it is that you're looking at. It may drag on for a bit. I
Yeah.
hope it doesn't. But if it does, we'll be there with the critical information that you need to know about which way this thing is swinging from now until whenever it is ultimately confirmed. With that, Smug, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you again to the Minions. And remember to go vote. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.